Hi, I'm Dr. J. I'm here on behalf of Nature's Alkaline Way and Nature's Pharmacy, and I am here today with one of my favorite people in the entire world, Roger Tolle, who studied directly with Dr. Milton Trager and has been my Trager practitioner for decades.
Shall we try and figure out how many years? No, like we won't go back
19,
there.
1982, I believe. It's not,
No, it'd be a little too soon. Been
oh,
85 or so.
okay, 85.
Mhm.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yes.
But yes, I am pleased that when you were fresh and new in transition from being a professional dancer to being a body worker, that I might have been one of your first clients. And I am today still a client who treasures your sessions. But I'd like to
And I'm
let,
grateful for that long relationship. And of course, it's gone both ways because I've been benefiting from the products that Russ sort of helps me figure out as I go along in my life to keep me healthy on the cellular level.
so let's talk a little bit about this Traeger movement education and mentastics, which is a particular kind of vitality enhancing stretching. But what's the magic of Traeger?
Ah, you're starting there, right from the what's the magic. One of the things that Milton Traeger kept reminding us over and over again is that all of the activity we bring to our clients, both on the table, passive movement, exploration, and freeing motions for the body, all of that, plus any of the things we are suggesting in terms of home play suggestions, ways that they can take care of themselves with their own movement skills, has little to no value unless it is done in a quality of what I now call somatic presence, what Milton Traeger referred to as a state of being hooked up to the life regulating, life generating, life enhancing force that is all around us. Connecting to this force of our very inner spirit as we work with our hands, as I work with my hands to work with my clients, as I work with my own body over all of these years to continually enhance my functioning. When I do that with this awareness and uh, a certain time taken to enhance that awareness in my body presence, so it's not just awareness of my mind, my conscious mind, it's that my body returns to what Milton Traeger often reminded us is a recalling of essentially a human born in state, a state of aliveness, a state of constant learning, a state of kind of wondering at the magic of the world. And when I am in this state, or you or any of my clients, as I bring them into this state as best I can, as best they're able to take, there is now much more than even when Milton was alive, much more information about how that state impacts the neurology of our systems, the cardiovascular engagement of our systems, the continual myofascial web of our systems, the hormonal balance of our systems, that it is state driven learning from the very beginning, from the time we sort of came out of the womb. And if we were lucky enough to be born into caregivers that loved us and cradled us and took good care of us, um, we felt that existence of protection and safety and care and surrounding of life, while at the same time embodying it all without ever having to think about it or really ever consciously choosing it. The tissue we are born with is born alive. Well, we hope, unless there are horrible things that happen. But for those of us that have survived as long as you and I have, we certainly were born with a fair bit of this very elusive to discuss quality, but very pervasive quality that Milton Trager said we need to be deeply hooked up to. So he called his experience of that state being in hookup, being in connection with that life energy.
Now,
To me, that's the
I'd
magic.
like us to pause for just a moment.
Mhm.
And then I would like to get deeply into the question of vitality. In Oriental medicine, the qi or ki or chi or vital flow of energy is fundamental. And they have thousands of years of observational studies, which are mostly unknown to Western medical practitioners, because there's plenty to learn about pharmacology and procedures. But there is much today that you can do with lifestyle. Much today that you can do to choose health.
Yes.
And in a moment, I would like us to talk in some detail about that.
Yes. As we begin to look at that Eastern model of health, where health is viewed as constant flow, and illness or sickness or ill health is a lack of flow or a stuckness in the flow of life. And I come back to this idea of life energy moving through us that should be allowing us to have a constant flow of our emotional states, all of them good, as long as they don't stay around forever, of stability in our structure. We ought to be able to stand quiet and upright, or sit quiet and upright for a while. But if we get stuck there, we are in kind of deepening trouble. And this, of course, is one of the epidemics that we talk about in this culture, the epidemic of sitting.
Aha,
Way
sitting
too
is the
much.
new smoking.
Yeah.
So what do you recommend for people who need to sit for extended periods of time?
Several things. So we can start by where and how you're sitting,
Aha,
so that you establish an environment that is comfortable and easy, supported sitting posture that feeds you life energy rather than that drags you back down. A chair that supports you in that, and that a chair also that supports you in not sitting still. A chair that, just like this one, invites a little bit of what my parents used to say was fidgeting. But now I say, please fidget at will, because that will help keep some changes in tissue tone through your entire body, even just this little rotation that I'm doing here, right? At my ankle level, there's a little something happening in my knees, in my thigh sockets, in the lumbar spine, there's something happening. All of that something happening is change. So we go right back to movement. Any kind of movement at any scale is enough of a change for our bodies to keep remembering that they are alive, to keep flowing with the flow of things. So another
in
thing,
Jewish homes, this is called shpilkus.
Shpilkus is it?
And the solution to shpilkus, which means sitting on pins and needles, if you translate it. The solution is A, to get up. And my friend Sid Baker pointed out that if you're sitting on 6 tacks and you remove 4, you're still sitting on 2. So yes, we can sit, but not more than an hour at a time. I suggest at least 5 minutes of every hour you get up, move around, look far away, look near, maybe even raise your hands. And then much of the harm of sitting can go away. So you can lie, you can walk, you can stand, but I suggest you not slouch.
Not slouch. That's a bad idea.
That's a terrible idea, but many, many people do, either as couch potatoes or at work, and that compounds the problem.
Another part of the problem results from constant fixation on the screen, where your little tiny eye muscles and the deep core muscles that support the weight of your head and move your head around get fixated, i.e., and remember that's part of the problem. Fixing is the problem. One of the jokes that I say, client comes to me with pain in their neck, can you fix this neck, or there's lower back problem? And I say, no, I'm not very good at fixing things, but I'm really good at unfixing them. If that would be useful, right? Unfix this frequently. The eyes, so just like you said, focal distance, this way, that way, look around in the room, let the head do a little free wobbling, the little bobblehead idea, or just having various images of movement in your neck, that will help. Another thing that's really useful and has become a bit of a trend these days is a standing desk. And there are even folks that do what I don't know how they do it exactly, a walking desk.
A walking desk, that's another option.
There's a treadmill that runs at a slow speed, and they can just keep stepping forward and still be able to sit at a keyboard. I can't do that much movement down below and still be able to type, but some people can. Interruption of the sitting is really useful, and there's a good deal of study that suggests more like 45 minutes as about the amount of time that we can productively focus in one thing before we need to shift, before our brain needs something different to pay attention to. So that doesn't always conform to what our hopes, our personal expectations are for, I need to sit here for 2 hours and get my taxes done, or I need to write these 18 emails before I let myself have a break. Well, I don't know. That kind of thinking is going to push us into a stuck place that's going to be bad for our health.
That is too much stress. That is too much rigidity. That is too much motivation coming from fear. I'm afraid that if I don't respond to an email in minutes, the world will come to an end. Well, no, it won't. And I actually would like us to get into a little more detail, if you'd be so kind,
please,
in regard to screens producing blue light that's really bad for your pineal gland, and why you should use a green dichro bulb.
At least 20 minutes to you to answer that, because that's not my area of.
But I want to introduce that because I know a number of people who are smart enough to find out that there are problems looking at screens and problems with the blue light that comes out of the screens. And so they buy blue blocker glasses.
Yeah.
You don't have to block the blue, you have to increase the green. Because in biology, it's always ratios. It's never absolute. It's always about proportion.
Really? You mean that thing my mom used to get into me all the time about everything in moderation, dear?
Including moderation.
Including moderation, right.
We had a very similar mother. But yes, you can choose habits of health by doing a makeover in your personal care, in your bedroom, in your kitchen, in your home or school. To choose vitality, to choose movement, to choose life. I get great joy out of walking in my garden.
And I get great joy by walking down by the river. And, some people take long vacations to do forest bathing. Well, I do it every day. I take a bath in the green that I walk through as I go through. I also, on your insistence, put a green light in my shower. So every morning I have about 10 or 15 minutes of green light space. I don't even turn the overhead other light on, just the green light.
You would like just the green. And this is an example of multitasking that's very beneficial and synergistic. So yes, you're getting clean. You're enjoying the spray and the humidity, but you should also be bathing in the light.
And there are wonderful ways, even in the shower, that I have incorporated some of what I learned from Milton about my own self-care, movement-wise. Just ways of moving and stretching gradually and slowly first thing in the day, because for me, shower is the first thing in the day. But also, I've figured out that over the last, half a dozen years, it really benefits me by taking a little extra time to, quote, wash my feet, but to get my fingers, with my soapy fingers, get my fingers between my toes and create more interdigital movement so that there's more sensation, so my brain has more access to the 5 toes on each foot and the 5 metatarsals in each foot and the arches of each foot and all the little lumbrical muscles that are in each foot. And to really get into that and say yes to me all the way down at that end, that's an end of my body I do not want to ignore, because I want to be able to walk on them. I want to be able to dance on them. I want to be able to stand at my table and do my work. I want to be able to do this for a long time. I've got to keep aliveness moving from my feet all the way back up to my heart in terms of the circulation, from my feet all the way up into my spinal cord and brain in terms of my nervous system, from my feet all the way through and wrapping around my skull in terms of my whole fascial web that is the shape of me in the world. I want to make sure that all of that, all of those scales of movement and systems of inner body play have some attention every day. And it's not difficult. So one of the things, when I don't move well, is one of my clients, and I say, yes, but are you moving now? And they say, oh no, I'm standing still. No, I say, no, there's no way you could stand still. Once you get completely still, you die and then you crumple onto the floor.
Right.
But as long as you're alive, there is internal movement your body is paying attention to, right? Even sitting quietly at a computer, there is still some movement. I want to enhance it, of course, but there is still aliveness happening there because I'm breathing, my digestion's happening, my heartbeat is beating, the circulation's still going.
The blood flow is better, but let's also talk about the lymphatic parallel circulation and how important that is, especially if you don't sit for too long, if you don't get too fixed and rigid. If you do move about, you are, I believe, moving the fluids that you must move around to get to the tissue, to the cells, to nourish those cells, to take away waste products from those cells. You are the person who pointed out first to me that among the many, many benefits of movement is renewal.
Yes.
And no part of you is more than 10 years old. That's your bones.
Mm-hmm.
Large blood vessels, joints, maybe 7 years. Muscles, your organs, your brain are constantly either renewing or you're losing. And between the stress
that's
of
also
high-tech
part of the
living,
renewing. Right? So the lingo that I've heard from neurologists these days is a term called brain pruning, right?
Yes, right.
The brain is constantly rejuvenating itself by virtue of saying, oh, I don't need that connection anymore. I don't use that connection. That branch isn't needed. I just pruned it away because I want to be able to use that same those brain cells and the connections for other connections in turn, my own additional growth and learning that will take me to whatever my next step is. So yeah, we've got this much tissue. We've got, I forget, how many trillion cells in our body?
Many trillions.
Many, yes. So, and all of those cells are organizing themselves both collectively and individually to maintain their own health in the context of all their surrounding tissue, in the context of their system of tissues, in the context of a system of systems that is all coordinated. Way too much for my conscious brain to be following and organizing. I have to be able to rely on the body itself to do its own good renewal process. And how I live, how I move, how I sleep, how I eat, all of that participates in making this body more alive each day, more wise each day, more fluid, more elegant, or all of that participates in making this body a little more heavy, thick, tight, restricted, uncomfortable, less inclined to move. Therefore, I sit more. Then we have this downward spiral that eventually means I don't move well. The tendency toward accidents, falling, breaking bones increases. The tendency toward stillnesses in various systems that result in sicknesses of those systems that then have great consequences for the body as a whole.
So we're talking about 1 million people a year in the United States who are buried at high cost with a lot of suffering years before they should. 500,000 from diabetes, an autoimmune self-attacking condition, which is a lifestyle disease. My friend pointed out that diabetes kills and diabetes costs, but diabetes is a lifestyle choice. Then we lose 250,000 people in America each year to nutritional deprivations from eating ultra-processed food and eating contaminated, but they're trying to be better. And what I say is wholeness. Whole fruits and vegetables, whole nuts and seeds, whole foods prepared in a wide variety of ways. Yummy, lots of herbs and seasonings, but if they're contaminated, they could harm. So I go to the trouble of specifying organic or biodynamic today because commercial is equivalent to harm. Many of the spices and seasonings that you would like to have in your diet that make the diet more interesting specifically have toxic metals added to them upstream to keep them more colorful, but to harm you. So you have to be a very aware consumer using nature's pharmacy, nature's alkaline way, and learning how to move.
So I would love your phrase there. Say, use nature's movement. And when I talk about moving more freely, I'm also referring to talking the way nature intended this human structure to move. Now, yes, I had professional dance training early on, some of which was not natural at all. Some of it was about defying nature. But as I learned more about what felt comfortable and freeing and opening and elegant in my own body, I began to also study, well, what is the natural way for every part to be wanting to move, right? So the leg has a certain kind of swing, the legs support each other in their alternating stability, mobility requirements in the action of walking. There are joint actions that each of us have available, built into the design of each joint, each one separately. And yours, even though you and I both have knee joints, our knee joints aren't exactly the same, right? We know
exactly
that,
right.
They're fitted to our own bodies. Well, let me say it another way. They are built by our own bodies after a similar template, because we have this human template, but they're built by what we did from the beginning of our lives. From the first times we got up onto our feet, our legs began to learn how to be our legs and to move as much as they could. We can continually change that, though, because this body is designed to keep learning new patterns and designs itself and rebuilds itself along the newly imagined way that I want to be able to move. But it takes a while for that tissue to regrow itself. Yeah.
Tincture of time.
The tincture of time. Yeah.
You helped me rehabilitate my knee. You also pointed out how connected my knee, my ankle, and my hip and my spine are. So I took that to note. And I had bone-on-bone pain. And I'm glad to say that was years ago, and I have more or less completely repaired my knee by following these natural principles and practices. And yes, I do move. I actually enjoy walking.
No, it's great. I'm glad to hear that. So some of those natural movement processes are embedded in the principles of the way our body structures itself and organizes itself, and the way the mind and the body work together. There are, and here gets right into the principles that are shared by many of the somatic movement therapy disciplines, not just Trager. But Milton Trager's approach to all of this is where I really put my heart and soul. One of the central ideas, and I'm just going to kind of scoot back so you can kind of see it in action here, is when I let myself collapse into gravity and get short. Actually, you can see that nicely on the screen. I can see here. So as I simply sink my head down in and like my ribs down in and my belly down in and just let my weight kind of drop down into my body, none of my naturally available movement happens so easily, right? I feel heavier, I walk slower, my stride is shorter, the acuity of my sensing in my joints is reduced by the compression through my structure. And for me now, I can demonstrate it really visibly. Most people can feel it really sensorily at the very first thing, just simply imagining the floating up of my head and letting the rest of me have its full length. You notice that I specifically don't say stand up straight, because there's nothing straight about a human body. There's no straight bone in the body. There are no flat joints in the body. It's all rounded. It's all curved. Every structure in there is, but it functions best when it's expanded. It's also more recent understanding that there isn't any good idea of biomechanics because there's nothing mechanical about this body we live in. Rather, it's about good body use, good dynamic body use, which includes expansion upward away from gravity, expansion out in all three dimensions so that all the inner systems have room to operate. When we let the spine have its full length, we give the nervous system more freedom, all the nerve roots to reach where they need to go, to give us the signals we need in order to process and identify movement. We increase the whole proprioceptive and interoceptive wisdom in the body, which is vitality, enlivening. And so we have other principles of ways of working here. We pay attention to this expansion. We pay attention to sensing our weight on the ground and being able to be present with being weighted and being expanded at the same time.
I've heard you describe this process as removing gravity briefly. And
or
I
reducing the downward pull of gravity by acknowledging that there's also a ground reactive force that bounces us back up. And you see this so easily in children that are just always kind of bouncy. They get socialized out of that. We all did, because it's distracting to the focused attention of the adult world. But the child's natural body, and here I go back to nature's way, we can look to children to see how bodies can naturally move and what they kind of naturally want to do. And I'm kind of doing this way.
Right.
And so this kind of movement where I just find some buoyancy, where I find a little buoyancy in arms and in legs, and use a constantly moving, oscillating randomness of movement to break up the patterned stillness of my adult thinking life.
This means you're staying in the moment.
Oh, come on. You mean I have to be present with myself?
Well, I'm encouraging it.
Yes, it exactly does. And I think earlier in this, I talked about somatic presence and enhancing the ability not just to be mentally present, but to be somatically present, which is a greater degree of engagement with sensation as part of the life process, as part of what we should be enjoying all the time.
If I would paraphrase that, I would say, if you live in the moment, you can enjoy life. If you live in the past, you will probably get depressed. And if you live in the future, you will probably get anxious. Be here now. That's a full-time activity to appreciate moment by moment the changes within and without. The hormones, the neurochemicals, the digestive juices, the metabolism, the microbiome.
Starting with something as easy as just noticing, are you inhaling right now?
Right.
Or are you exhaling?
Right.
You're either doing one or the other, or pausing in the interface between the two. And if you're just aware of that, and almost every wisdom tradition, every body-based wisdom tradition has a focus on breath, deeply embedded in the process of being present.
exactly well said and well recommended. I'm eager for people to put into practice the Trager technique, possibly doing mentastics. You can look at Roger's video, Moving into Agelessness, on YouTube. You can also find me on YouTube, Dr. Russell Jaffe. And I have very much enjoyed listening to, learning from, and being present with Roger. It is always a privilege to be with someone who is in the moment, who shows me how to be more alive, who shows me how to enjoy the movement of the moment even more, and makes me feel good. Not so bad.
Which, by the way, is one of the principles of the feeling of aliveness. It should feel good.
Yes.
So when we're talking about exploring movement, it is only within the realm of what feels good in the moment, and it could be as little as this. If this is all that feels good, that's a good place to start. But enough of something little invites something a little more, invites something a little bit more.
Amen. Thank you, Roger,
Thank you, Russ.
for enlightening us, for informing us, for inspiring us. And hopefully we will have another few decades ahead to continue feeling and functioning well, while like good wine, we get better.